Money on my mind, looking for a dime. James Locke in the house, gonna help you shine.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Poole Locke YouTube channel. I'm James Locke. Today we're going to answer some of the Ask James questions of the day. First question today is from Alan. He says, tariffs usually cause inflation. I've been watching the liberal media. They say they're terrible for the economy, but the conservative media also says they're not so bad. So who should I believe? All right, Alan, well, as most things in life, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? And it depends upon the company from which you're buying goods and services, because some larger companies, they can absorb the tariff and find efficiencies in other places and not pass it all on. This is particularly important when we think about your investment portfolio and the companies you might be holding for dividend income. It also depends upon the amount of the tariff. So as a general rule, for example, if the tariff is, let's say, 10%, there's a higher chance that a company can absorb that and not pass it on to the consumer. Because if they pass it on and they reduce their sales by 10%, well, they're kind of sort of back to where they started. This is why many income investors look closely at a company's profit margins and their ability to maintain pricing power during challenging times. Now, if it's a bigger tariff, if it starts to approach 25%, then clearly some of that will be passed on to the consumer for sure. But here's the thing, because it shows up in the CPI index, it doesn't mean it needs to show up in your wallet, or in your household, because the CPI index is, of course, taking a look at the whole, like the universe, right? Not essentially the universe, but the universe of goods and services. And they have the cost going up. So high tariffs do cause increases in retail prices and are going to show up in the CPI, that the government uses as a gauge for inflation. But the good thing is each household gets to make that decision, and that's really what I'm talking about, that decision. What we're talking about in retirement income, right? The flexibility in consumer choice, right? Because even more important for managing it's important for managing your fixed expenses. Essentially you can decide if you want to buy goods from this company or from a multinational company or that can absorb it better, right? Do you want to buy from this part of the world? Do you want to buy from that part of the world? Right? So there's a lot of fruits, for example, and you'll say, well, we buy them from Mexico. All right. Well, they could be imported from South America and maybe not subject to those tariffs, right? So this same principle applies to choosing investments, right? Diversifying across different regions and sectors can help protect your retirement income from tariff-related market volatility. So again, you just have to be a little bit more careful in looking at that, and you get to choose whether you want to pay that tariff or not. Now, for retirees focused on generating stable income, this means, considering how tariffs might affect both your spending power and the profitability of the companies paying your dividends. So there's things to factor. So Alan, I hope that kind of helps with both the immediate question and the broader implications for retirement planning. So that was a great question. Thanks so much. Hey, if you want to send in your question like Alan did, you can do so by emailing it to poollocke@poollocke.com. Moving on to our second question. We have an email from Marjorie, and she says, I understand that inflation typically affects retirees much more than younger folks. Is this true? All right, Marjorie, well, I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to call you Marge. I hope that's okay. So the inflation issue is dependent upon how you spend your money, right? So the reason it's said that some younger folks don't have as big a hit on inflation is because of debt. Younger people typically have more debt, and that debt is a fixed payment, right? So think about your first house payment, where perhaps you bought the house and that mortgage payment was huge and you thought, how are we ever going to pay that? Well, if you kept that mortgage to term anywhere, 20, 30 years later, that mortgage payment was probably about, maybe a car payment by that point, right? And this is why some financial advisors suggest considering keeping a portion of fixed rate debt as an inflation hedge, even in retirement, assuming it aligns with your overall financial strategy. So all of a sudden that mortgage payment didn't go up with inflation, right? So your net income after your fixed debt payments really went up faster than inflation. Now, on the other hand, if you have children and, let's say you had a bunch of boys, and when, they got to be teenagers, I'm sure you felt food inflation and the effects of that much greater than a lot of other people. So this is exactly why having investments that provide growing income, like dividend growth stocks or TIPS, right? Treasury inflation protected securities, can be so important in retirement. So it really depends upon your situation. So in retirement, if you carry a mortgage, now I'm not saying you should, but that's something that's going to help you because it's not going to be subject to inflation, right? A fixed payment. But the problem in retirement is that when you get into later retirement, you have medical costs, and medical costs go up at typically a higher rate than the general rate of inflation. Now, in most cases, studies have shown that it's about double that rate. So this is one reason why having a portion of your retirement portfolio in healthcare sector investments can act as a natural hedge against rising medical costs. So in later years, when you have more medical costs, well, now the effects of inflation on you, at least the medical component, are perhaps double, right? How about, that's later in life. How about earlier inflation? Well, you want to do more things, right? You want to travel more, you want to have more fun. So I guess in earlier retirement years, it really depends upon how flexible you want to be with those plans. Do you want to be careful how you spend the money for vacations and trips and things that you want to do or not, right? This is where having a diversified income stream from multiple sources, maybe some fixed income for stability, some dividend growth stocks for inflation protection, and perhaps some real estate investment trusts, REITs, for additional income diversity. It can really help manage these varying expenses. So I would say net, yes, it has a little bit more impact on retirees than it does on younger people. But again, you are largely in control of where you spend those dollars, especially in the earlier years when you're healthier and hopefully, fingers crossed, God willing, you don't have huge medical costs later on. The key is to build an investment portfolio that provides not just current income, but income that has the potential to grow over time and help offset these inflation impacts we've discussed. Marjorie, thanks for emailing in your question. That was an awesome question. If you would like to send in your question, you can do so by emailing it to poollocke@poollocke.com. And if you like what you heard, go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel. I'm James Locke, your retirement income source. See everyone next time.
Money on my mind, looking for a dime. James Locke in the house, gonna help you shine. Retirement is near, don't you live in fear. Listen up, my friend, let me make it clear. Savings in the bank.